Out front next, breaking news, the Wall Street Journal right now reporting an informant tipped off investigators about more classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. That news breaking just moments ago. Plus, Trump deposed the former president under oath, facing 12 state attorneys today for 4 hours, but Trump pleading the fifth, something he has said you only do if you're guilty. And inside Mar-a-Lago, a maze of more than 100 rooms with large areas off limits to anyone but family. An expert on the property walks us through. Let's go out front. And good evening, I'm Erin Burnett. Out front tonight, the breaking news about what led the FBI to search Trump's Mar-a-Lago. The Wall Street Journal is reporting tonight that an informant familiar with the White House documents that Trump had at Mar-a-Lago told investigators that there were more of them, more classified documents. And this informant told the investigators this after the National Archives had retrieved 15 boxes earlier this summer, thinking they had a lot more than they had. Well, enter the informant. A significant development this hour, as Justice Department officials, as CNN has reported, had doubts that the Trump team was being truthful about what material was still on the property. This breaking news comes as the head of the FBI was silent when pressed on Trump's baseless accusations of FBI agents planting evidence during the search on his Mar-a-Lago home. Christopher Wray dodged the question.
Well, as I'm sure you can appreciate, that's not something that I can talk about, so I'd refer you to the department.
Wray, of course, was Trump's, handpicked director. And tonight, within the Justice Department, a major debate on whether they should speak out to the public about the search on Trump's home. CNN is learning that some Justice Department officials believe that the agency should release a public statement about the search. It's been more than 48 hours since agents entered Trump's home, and the questions are only growing. Now, ordinarily, they wouldn't give answers, but this is no ordinary situation. And in the absence of answers and information, Trump and his followers are filling the void with absurdity. Just a short time ago, the former president writing, on Monday, without notification or warning, an army of agents broke into Mar-a-Lago. A surprise attack. A surprise attack broke in an army? But this is what's getting out there. And the reality in this case is that we've learned, well, that's all completely bogus. You may expect it even hearing those words, but it does happen to be bogus. The Department of Justice went out of its way to avoid making Monday's search a spectacle. People briefed on the matter are saying that agents appeared at 10 a.m. They didn't come at 6:30 a.m. to catch people in their underwear, 10 a.m., not wearing their usual FBI uniforms, wearing plain clothes. But all of these developments are coming as Trump's legal troubles continue to mount. In New York today, just before 9 a.m., Trump entered the New York Attorney General's office, which is investigating his organization's finances. He was having a deposition taken. He left around 3:30. So we're told that the questioning time was 4 hours. 4 hours is a very long time when he took the fifth on everything. It's a lot of time of saying, I'm not going to answer your question. We're going to have more on his deposition coming up. But first, Pamela Brown is out front live in Washington tonight. And Pamela, what more are you learning here about the FBI possibly getting help from the inside in terms of, hey, guess what? They didn't give you all the information you asked for.
Right. What's interesting here, Erin, is that this is an investigation that's been going on for more than a year, but things clearly started heating up over the summer after that June visit from the FBI to Mar-a-Lago. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that someone familiar with the stored documents told investigators that there may still be more classified information at Mar-a-Lago even after the archives took away those 15 boxes of documents stored at Mar-a-Lago that had come from the White House. So you have this, the fact that the FBI spoke to a witness, and we don't know who this witness is, if it was a Trump representative, because we know they were talking to Trump people, or if it was someone at the archives that had insight, a big picture insight. We just don't know. But what we do know is that, according to the Wall Street Journal, that CNN has not confirmed, that the FBI was talking to someone who led them to eventually execute the search warrant that we just saw a couple of days ago. You also have the fact that I'm told by sources that the FBI was already suspicious that Trump's representatives were not being fully forthcoming with what was left there at Mar-a-Lago, and thought that there was documents that still belonged in the government's hands. So it's helping us better understand what led to this unprecedented search that is now really putting a lot of pressure on DOJ, Aaron, to speak out. As my colleague Evan Perez is reporting, internally there is this active discussion. Some really believe that DOJ should put out a public statement, address this. As you pointed out, it's not typical DOJ protocol to do that, but these are extraordinary circumstances. So far, though, Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, has held the line that he wants to stick to DOJ policy and not talk about an ongoing investigation. So we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Pamela Brown, thank you very much. Reporting from Washington tonight. I want to go now to Stephanie Grisham, former Trump White House press secretary. She resigned after the insurrection on January 6th. Also with me tonight, Dave Arenberg, the Democratic state attorney for Palm Beach County, and Harry Litman, former U.S. attorney and former deputy assistant attorney general. Thanks so much to all of you. Stephanie, as this news is breaking here in just these past few minutes, right, that the Wall Street Journal is saying that there was an informant on the inside who told investigators, guess what? Trump is not giving you everything. He's not giving you everything that you've asked for. They're holding back. You suggested when this news was first breaking, we were talking, you said someone inside may have helped. Why was that your immediate thought? And now that it is being reported by the Wall Street Journal, what's your reaction?
You know, it's just because right now he's got such a small circle around him. And I know how Mar-a-Lago is laid out. So it would have to be somebody very close to him to know not only what was brought, but where it is being stored. And knowing how paranoid the president was while we were in the White House, I can't imagine what things are like now. And again, he's got a very, very small circle around him. I don't believe even the staff of Mar-a-Lago would be involved in this. So that's where I kind of came from on Monday night when I was talking to you about it.
Pretty significant, though, because you're talking about what a small circle it is now. It was never large. It's now incredibly small. Harry, what do you read into that? I mean, that is somebody, assuming that this reporting is all going to bear out, somebody in a very small circle who turned and sold him out.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. And I think Stephanie's surmise was always sound and others had made it, because one thing you could be sure of, even if you didn't know the content of the affidavit, was that it was bulletproof. And what that meant, among other things, is it gave the magistrate very good reason, probable cause plus, to know that there was going to be classified information down there, things that, in fact, his having could be bad for the national interest. They needed some extra thing that they had found out since June, and it makes all the sense in the world that that would have come from a confidential informant. Indeed, it's hard to know where else it might have come from.
Yeah, I mean, Dave, does this surprise you? I know you know quite a bit, obviously being from Florida, knowing so many of the law enforcement players involved.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all, Aaron. And this has to be a gut punch to Trump, who demands complete loyalty, although that loyalty is a one-way street. I suspected an informant because the DOJ could have tried to get these documents through other means, like a subpoena, but they didn't do so. And that means they didn't trust Trump to comply with the subpoena. So they thought it was urgent. They sent in investigators to go grab them themselves. And if you're going to get a judge to sign off on a search warrant, you need to specify not just the documents you want, but also the location of the documents. And how do you get that? You get someone from the inside to do it. And the fact that this is going to be the most scrutinized search warrant in the history of our country shows you that it is bulletproof, as Harry said, but also that the material seized must be more than just love letters from Kim Jong-un. It must be serious documents that implicate national security.
So, Harry, let me ask you about that. Is that how you see it? And also, to that point, when we get down to some things we don't know, but we do know exist, right? Which is when they showed up with information, they took things, and Trump would have a list of what they took, right? We might know some of those information. Maybe it wasn't the love letter, as Trump called it, from Kim Jong-un, but it was something else. And it may be very specific, and that may be, that may be information known, right? Printed information, right?
Yeah, you got to imagine he knows. Now, of course, people are trying already to unseal the affidavit, and you say there's a debate at DOJ. Very hard to see it. And imagine this confidential informant. Trump was ready to hang Mike Pence. He'd be ready to draw and quarter this guy. And it has to be very important, therefore, to keep it confidential and keep the ongoing investigation confidential. But to your question, yeah, he knows what it is, or his lawyers know what it is, because they've been playing around with DOJ and the archive since at least June, and now there are things that are missing, and very possibly some of them are singular copies. And those, of course, when they're gone, they're gone. It's not clear, by the way, very quickly, that what the document list they left them with is that itemized and that specific. But even if it isn't, they will know.
They will know. And so when the former president says the DOJ needs to speak, and McConnell and others are saying the DOJ needs to speak, well, perhaps Trump could just tell them. Trump could tell his Republican comrades what was taken, what it was about, right? He has that knowledge.
If that's to me, yes, and he won't, because it'd be damning.
So Stephanie, there is the question about why now, right? The negotiations have been going on, and they'd reached a point, boxes were handed over. Then at some point, this informant comes forward. But when they move, they appear to move very quickly. What does that say to you, Stephanie?
I think that, as your previous guest just said, I think that the confidential informant was somebody that knows something. Again, I am speculating here, but I think that this person said, maybe something's about to be moved or destroyed. You need to get in here. And I think the person is so close in that circle that whatever judge would have signed off on it, that is why they would have signed off on it, because they really trust this person. I think that the person feels that, the walls are closing in on Trump, right? He's under investigation 6, 7. I can't even keep track right now. So that's kind of my thought. And one other thing, Aaron, if you don't mind, this is a little off topic. This occurred to me while we were talking or listening, while I was listening a second ago. With all of the rhetoric happening, I just would urge right now Donald Trump or his staff or his supporters or, I don't know, Republican leadership, instead of whining about being victims right now, perhaps they could put out some statements saying there is no room for violence right now. I think that's really, really important when you see some of the news of the rhetoric coming out. Maybe we learned from January 6th.
And, Dave, to that point, what we've heard from the former president is he's saying that they, using the word planting, talking about the FBI and what they came, hopefully not planting information right when they came in. That's what's filling the void here. He's talking about an attack. He's talking about an army. That's what he's saying happened to him. Right? It runs counter to what we understand happened, which was showing up at 10 in the morning, not 6:30 a.m., showing up in plain clothes, not wearing FBI logo jackets, very different from what Trump is saying. He even used the word siege. So, Dave, what more are you able to tell us? Yeah.
Well, it is telling that he is saying that the FBI planted evidence. That is a desperate defense. And it ignores the fact that his own lawyers were present at Mar-a-Lago for this. So his lawyers aren't doing their jobs if they're allowing the FBI to plant evidence right in front of them. But that's a misnomer. It didn't happen. The fact is that this was a very orderly search of the property, was not a raid. There were plainclothes FBI agents who walked around escorted by Secret Service, and they collected documents. But it is in Donald Trump's interest to call it a raid or a siege because he wants to be a MAGA martyr. He wants to run for president, and he has now just sucked all the oxygen out of the room. Who's Ron DeSantis? We forgot who that guy is at this point. So Trump gets what he wants, and he gets to be rested and ready to run for president with a pocket full of grievances.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate your time as we get that latest headline breaking this hour. Next, Trump takes the fifth today, refusing to answer questions during a deposition that lasted 4 hours. So what went on inside the room? I mean, that is a lot of questions when your answer is no answer. 4 hours. Breaking new details next.
The mob takes the fifth. If you're innocent, why are you taking the Fifth Amendment?
When you have your staff taking the Fifth Amendment, taking the Fifth so they're not prosecuted. When you have the man that set up the illegal server taking the Fifth, I think it's disgraceful.
Have you seen what's going on in front of Congress? Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment. Horrible. Horrible.
The questions began. There was one of the state attorneys who was flanked by 10 others. He was the one solely asking Trump questions as these other attorneys were handing notes and documents. And for each and every one of those questions, Donald Trump responded same answer over and over again to invoke the Fifth Amendment. Now, this continued on for several hours. I'm told the Attorney General left around lunchtime. And despite the barbs that they have both thrown at each other, Trump shook hands with James as she left. You know, I was told that at the beginning of this deposition, the mood was fairly tense, but it had turned cordial and professional. And when Trump eventually left, he shook the hands of all of the state attorneys who were there for that deposition. He left around 3 o'clock today, and we believe he's heading to Mar-a-Lago.
They held stuff back. This comes amid growing questions about what investigators found and why Trump wanted to keep whatever these documents were from the government. Here's what we do know about the search. We know it included Trump's personal quarters, his offices, and a basement storage area that had been padlocked after the FBI visited Mar-a-Lago in June. And it had documents with top secret markings in it at that time. Tom Foreman is out front.
Mar-a-Lago is a nearly 100-year-old maze of more than 100 rooms, and the FBI search could have been impossible. At least Sarah Blasky thought so. She's a co-author of a book about Trump and his Florida home.
My thought was, how are they going to find anything in Mar-a-Lago? Because there are so many nooks and crannies.
But then the Washington Post said some boxes were found in a basement area, and she recognized another focal point. Just above the ballroom on the second floor, the former president's personal suite.
And around that same location is where his office would have also been. And so those areas are private. They're accessible only to the family and then also the staff that keep it clean and that kind of thing.
Trump spent hundreds of days of his presidency at his properties, Mar-a-Lago above all others. There he played golf at his nearby course, ordered a missile strike on Syria, and entertained the president of China, the prime minister of Japan.
Many of the world's great leaders request to come to Mar-a-Lago and Palm Beach. They like it. I like it. We're comfortable.
Political allies were welcome, so were members of the private club, who, insiders say a few years ago, could enjoy the warm Florida sun for a cool $200,000 fee, along with the pool and proximity to the leader of the free world. The New York Times called Mar-a-Lago a kind of Washington steakhouse on steroids, where members and their guests enjoy a level of access that could elude even the best connected of lobbyists.
Mar-a-Lago is the place that you want to do business with him. It wasn't ever the White House. Mar-a-Lago was the place that you closed deals, and that was because that was where he was comfortable.
Trump called all the shots, but then he lost the presidency. This past January, officials at the National Archives say they collected 15 boxes of documents from Mar-a-Lago, some containing items marked as classified national security information, some containing papers which had been torn up by the former president. And now the feds have snatched another batch from Trump's grasp. Exactly what it holds, Aaron, as you point out, we don't really know. But suffice to say, agents not only cracked into his safe, they cracked into his safe space.